Imagine you wake up one morning in Europe about 300 years ago. Your head hurts. You feel tired. Maybe you have a fever. Maybe you just caught a cold. So naturally, you decide to visit the doctor. The doctor listens carefully. He looks at you for a moment. He nods wisely. Then he reaches for a sharp blade and prepares to remove some of your blood. Not a little blood. Quite a lot of blood. And the strange thing is, this was considered perfectly normal. For hundreds and hundreds of years, bloodletting was one of the most common medical treatments in the world. Doctors used it for headaches, fevers, infections, stomach pain, mental illness, and almost anything else you could think of. If your arm hurt, bloodletting. If your stomach hurt, bloodletting. If you couldn't sleep, bloodletting. If you slept too much, somehow also bloodletting. Looking back today, it sounds unbelievable. But for much of human history, people truly believed that removing blood could save lives. To understand why, we have to travel back to ancient times. The idea came from a medical theory called the four humors. Ancient Greek doctors believed the human body contained four important fluids. These were blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. According to this theory, good health depended on keeping these fluids in balance. If one humor became too strong, illness would appear. Too much black bile might make a person sad. Too much phlegm could make someone sluggish. And too much blood was thought to cause many different diseases. So if a patient looked sick, doctors often assumed there was excess blood in the body. The solution seemed simple. Take some out. The theory was supported by famous ancient physicians such as Hippocrates and later Galen. Their writings became extremely influential. For centuries, their ideas shaped medicine across Europe and parts of the Middle East. Once a medical belief becomes accepted, it can be very difficult to challenge, especially when there are no microscopes, no laboratory tests, and no understanding of germs. Doctors had very few tools available. Bloodletting at least felt like they were doing something, and sometimes patients even seemed to improve afterward. Of course, many illnesses naturally get better with time. But when a patient recovered after bloodletting, the treatment often received the credit. When the patient didn't recover, doctors usually assumed the disease had simply been too severe. This helped the practice survive for generations. The actual process could be quite unpleasant. Doctors used special blades called lancets. They would make a small cut, usually on the arm, and allow blood to flow into a bowl or container. Sometimes only a little blood was removed. Other times, much larger amounts were taken. The exact amount depended on the doctor's judgment, the patient's condition, and perhaps how strongly the doctor believed in the treatment. There was no universal rulebook. Some physicians became surprisingly skilled at the procedure. In fact, many barber shops also performed bloodletting. Yes, barbers. The same people who cut hair and trimmed beards often carried out minor medical procedures. This unusual connection is one reason barber poles traditionally feature red and white stripes. Many historians believe the colors represented blood and bandages. So next time you see a barber pole, remember that it has a rather dramatic medical history. Not all bloodletting involved knives. Many doctors preferred a different helper, a small, slimy helper, the leech. Leeches are worms that feed on blood. Doctors would place them directly onto the patient's skin and allow them to attach themselves. The leech would quietly drink until it became full. Then it would fall off. It sounds unpleasant today, but patients often preferred leeches because they seemed less frightening than being cut with a blade. Over time, leech therapy became incredibly popular. Millions upon millions of leeches were used throughout Europe. Entire businesses appeared to collect and sell them. At certain points, demand became so high that shortages actually occurred. Imagine a world where one of society's biggest supply problems involved not having enough blood-sucking worms. History is full of surprises. Perhaps the most famous example of bloodletting gone wrong involved George Washington. In 1799, Washington developed a severe throat infection. His doctors attempted several treatments, including extensive bloodletting. Over a short period, a large amount of his blood was removed. Modern medical experts generally believe this likely weakened him further during an already serious illness. He died soon afterward. Today, many historians view the treatment as an example of how dangerous bloodletting could be. Yet even events like this were not enough to completely end the practice. The belief was simply too deeply rooted. Medical traditions often move slowly. Doctors learned from teachers who had learned from other teachers. Textbooks repeated the same ideas. Patients expected these treatments because they had seen them used before. Everyone trusted the system because everyone else trusted the system. Eventually, however, medicine began to change. Scientists started studying the body more carefully. New discoveries challenged old assumptions. Doctors learned about circulation, bacteria, infection, and disease. Evidence became more important than tradition. As research improved, bloodletting slowly lost its place as a universal cure. By the late 19th century, many physicians had abandoned it. Today, bloodletting is rarely used. There are a few specific medical conditions where controlled removal of blood can still help patients. But these cases are very limited and based on scientific evidence, not ancient theories about humors. Looking back, bloodletting might seem foolish, but it tells us something important about human history. People desperately wanted answers. Doctors wanted to help. Patients wanted relief. Without modern science, they worked with the best explanations they had available. Sometimes those explanations were wrong. Very wrong. But every mistake helped push medicine a little further toward the knowledge we have today. And perhaps that is the most fascinating part of the story. For centuries, people believed that health could be restored by letting blood flow into a waiting bowl. Now, it stands as one of history's strangest medical treatments. Though considering some of the cures we'll encounter next, bloodletting may not even be the weirdest one on our list. If bloodletting sounds strange, the next treatment takes things to an entirely different level. Imagine living thousands of years ago. You develop terrible headaches. Perhaps you suffer from seizures. Maybe you were injured during a hunt or a battle. Or maybe you begin acting in a way that people around you cannot understand. The local healer examines you carefully. After some thought, they decide there is only one solution. They are going to drill a hole into your skull. Not metaphorically, an actual hole. And somehow, this became one of the oldest surgical procedures in human history. This treatment is called trepanation, sometimes known as trephination. Archaeologists have discovered evidence of it all over the world. Ancient skulls with carefully cut openings have been found in Europe, South America, Africa, and Asia. Some of these skulls are thousands of years old. In fact, trepanation is so ancient that it existed long before written history in many places. That means people were performing skull surgery before they had books, hospitals, or even a clear understanding of how the brain worked, which is both impressive and slightly terrifying. The big question is simple. Why would anyone do this? The answer depends on where and when you lived. Many ancient cultures believed illness could be caused by evil spirits, curses, or supernatural forces. If someone suffered from seizures, severe headaches, mental illness, or unusual behavior, people often assumed a spirit had entered the body. And if a spirit had gotten inside the head, perhaps creating an opening in the skull would allow it to escape. It may sound strange to us, but remember that these societies had no knowledge of brain chemistry, neurological disorders, or infections. People still needed explanations for what they saw. And when someone suddenly collapsed, heard voices, or behaved unpredictably, supernatural causes often seemed reasonable. Trepanation was one attempt to solve a mystery. Not every procedure was connected to spirits, though. Some cases may have been related to injuries. Ancient warriors frequently suffered head wounds during combat. A healer might remove damaged pieces of bone or reduce pressure after an injury. In some situations, the treatment may actually have helped. That possibility is one reason historians remain fascinated by trepanation. The procedure itself varied from culture to culture. Some healers used sharp stone tools. Others used metal instruments once those became available. Rather than punching directly through the skull, many carefully scraped away layers of bone little by little. This was slow work, very slow work, and probably not the kind of appointment anyone looked forward to. Modern dentists make people nervous enough. Now imagine hearing someone say, "Good news, today we're going to gently scrape your skull for several hours." Most people would suddenly remember another place they needed to be. Surprisingly, many patients appear to have survived. This is one of the most shocking discoveries made by archaeologists. When experts examine ancient skulls, They often find signs of healing around the edges of the opening. Bone growth indicates the person lived long after the operation, sometimes for years. That means these procedures were not always fatal. Far from it. In some regions, survival rates may have been surprisingly high. Of course, not everyone was so fortunate. Without modern anesthesia, antibiotics, or sterile surgical tools, the risks were enormous. Infection alone could be deadly. Yet enough patients survived to show that some ancient healers possessed remarkable skill. One of the most famous examples comes from ancient Peru. The civilizations of the Andes became particularly experienced with trepanation. Archaeologists have uncovered hundreds of skulls showing evidence of the procedure. Some researchers believe surgeons there gradually improved their techniques over centuries. Certain studies even suggest survival rates became better than those seen in some military surgeries performed much later in history. That is an astonishing achievement, especially when you remember they were working without modern hospitals. For many patients, trepanation was likely a last resort. When severe pain refused to disappear, people were willing to try almost anything. And that is a theme we will encounter again and again throughout the series. Desperation changes what people consider reasonable. A treatment that sounds frightening today may have seemed hopeful in the past. If someone suffered constant headaches for years, the possibility of relief might outweigh the risks. Even if the treatment involved a hole in the skull. Trepanation also reveals something interesting about human nature. People often imagine ancient societies as completely irrational. But the reality is more complicated. Many healers carefully observed symptoms. They experimented. They learned from experience. They passed knowledge to future generations. Their explanations for disease were often incorrect, but their desire to understand illness was very real. In a strange way, trepanation represents an early form of surgery. Not scientific surgery as we know it today, but surgery nonetheless. Humans recognized that physical problems might sometimes require physical solutions. That idea eventually helped lead to modern medicine. Today, trepanation still exists in a very limited sense. Modern brain surgeons occasionally remove sections of skull during highly specialized procedures. The difference, of course, is enormous. Today's operations take place in sterile operating rooms. Patients receive anesthesia. Doctors use advanced imaging technology. The goal is based on decades of scientific research rather than escaping spirits. The ancient procedure and the modern procedure may look similar on the surface, but they belong to completely different worlds. Still, there is something fascinating about knowing that people thousands of years ago attempted surgeries that resemble certain modern techniques. The motives were different, the understanding was different, but the determination to heal was the same. As night falls over the ancient world, we can imagine a healer working carefully beside a fire. Stone tools are laid out nearby. A worried family waits in silence. The patient hopes for relief from pain, illness, or injury. No one knows exactly what will happen next. Yet they proceed anyway, because throughout history, people have always searched for answers. Sometimes those answers were helpful. Sometimes they were strange. And sometimes they involved drilling a hole directly into someone's head. As unusual as trepanation may seem, our journey through the history of medicine is only beginning. The next treatment will introduce us to a creature that spent centuries helping doctors remove blood one sip at a time. A small creature with a very big medical career. The humble leech.